Good morning to those who are joining me on my Facebook page. And we're going to do a devotional this morning from Joshua chapter 1 verse 9. It says, "Have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Now we look at this post-quarantine world, we're seeing how life is full of change and transition. Oftentimes transition will challenge us and reveal where we are struggling in faith. And see, there's going to be places where we're not fully trusting God, but through the difficulty of change, we can still rely on God. And right now, I'm finding myself once again in the midst of change. I used to be employed in a place where even though I had gotten a promotion, I found myself in the midst of a toxic environment. And it eventually depleted my soul and my mind. And I got demoted. And eventually it led to me being fired because I was bullied and gaslighted to the point where I just gave up. I didn't even try to fight what was going on. I just accepted what was happening and just gave up. And it was a tough time, especially since I had spent 7 years in that job. But then I transitioned to becoming a first lady, where I struggled because I didn't feel that I had a place to fit in that church. I had a rare situation where it was the former first lady was still there working in an active role, and I was just filling in. I was trying to find a place to fit in. It was hard for me because I was a former tomboy, and I hated pantyhose, and I hate dresses with a passion. I don't like to wear heels. I don't like to be girly. I like non-girly things. I like wearing pants to church, and I admire all those other ladies who dress up. I like looking at them because they look gorgeous and beautiful, and I know how much hard work it is to maintain that look and to be like that, because I really wasn't trying to be the one doing all that. I wasn't trying to be putting on pantyhose. I definitely don't wear heels anymore after I broke my ankle one time, and pantyhose, I still, it's tough. It's a challenge at times, but I tried to leave the women's ministry and I failed. I started a children's church and was happy there, but then the pandemic hit, and that led me to end up doing virtual ministry. And we started out with my husband on the couch in our living room. As we stayed on lockdown, we kept going, and through trial and error, we kept going, and we experienced seasons of transition, but the in-between trials of life. And just like Job, Daniel, Abraham, Paul, and the disciples all experienced times of frustration, pain, suffering, and difficult questions, we too experience these seasons of transition. And it's vital that we rely on God when the life gets tough. And while I wasn't putting out slick, polished videos in my ministry, my video in the virtual ministries, we weren't having all these perfection. It wasn't glossy and fancy, but it was good. It was just like Lilo and Stitch. When Stitch had finally understood the meaning of Ohana, it wasn't good. People were still, just a ministry. It was good. But, this experience, it makes me realize that we need to keep our leaders and our pastors in prayer constantly, because they're dealing with transition, and they too experience situations and times when their cracks may deepen. Often pastors and leaders serve at the expense of their own personal lives and situations, and there's many marriages in faith that have been put to test, especially in the midst of this pandemic. There are many people who have just walked away from ministry. There are many people who just realize that a lot is going on just because of what is happening and trying to minister to God's people in this time. So we want to keep them uplifted in prayer, because this pandemic has put a challenge on ministry and the people who work on it. We hear stories of how many are trying to cope, and I hear about pastors committing suicide, pastors walking away from their families, people no longer deciding to be married, just so many other situations. And I have my own times when I just need a few extra minutes to make it to morning prayer. So I put on some filler content so I could get my teeth brushed and get a chance to comb my hair, because I'm just trying to get dressed or get through the day, to minimize my chores so I could get some extra study time, or just to have to pray for extra strength just to make it through the morning because I had a tough night and a tough day. But I envy those who seem to be blessed with lives, and they had faith, and they're looking with things that are strengthened, and they look Instagram and Facebook perfect, as opposed to a messy faith that's falling apart. And when your transition was painful for me, it can be hard to be hopeful in the midst of transition, but especially when the destination is unclear. It can be hard to trust when God's promises take longer time to come about than what we want. And sometimes transition is going to mess with our expectations. It's going to ruin our contentment, and it is going to be at times transitioning and make us feel crazy and unsure. But we know We can look at this story where a little boy, he had gotten a football for Christmas, and his bully came along and he took it. And he went home and got his big brother, who was bigger and taller than the bully, to go bring it back. And when the time came and he got up on the bully, he was able to go get his football back from that boy in confidence. And it wasn't because of who he was, but it was because of who was with him. And so we're going to go through challenges and situations, and we only get through because of who we have with us.